Part 27. The Prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 261. Shen Chuwei shook her head helplessly. Your Highness is not allowed to buy. If she was allowed to buy, she would have expanded the scale and raised 2 more pigs and a group of big white geese. Concubine Su expressed her incomprehension. Why not? Shen Chuwei signaled with her eyes. Smell it? Concubine Su took 2 steps forward with doubt, and just smelled the smell. She almost vomited directly. It turned out to be the smell. I'm not saying, you are a noble concubine, why don't you raise chickens and ducks? Shen Chuwei spread her hands. Now you understand why your Highness doesn't allow you to raise them. Concubine Su was stunned, and then she reacted. She coughed twice. Your Highness's decision is still somewhat reasonable. You are a concubine, what do you want to eat? You don't understand this. This is what I call preparing for a rainy day, Shen Chuwei said proudly. Concubine Su subconsciously thought, are you short of money? Shen Chuwei nodded, forget it. You wait. Concubine Su ran out in a flash. Shen Chuwei called out in confusion, Concubine Su, where are you going? Concubine Su had already disappeared. Shen Chuwei looked back at the dead chickens and ducks, feeling so painful. At night, Shen Chuwei saw Xiao Jinyan and shared her sad story with him. 5 chickens and ducks died, and I didn't save them. Shen Chuwei was so sad that she couldn't help herself when she thought that they were so fat, not because she was eaten, but because they were poisoned. Xiao Jinyan said helplessly, it's just chickens and ducks, aren't there still 6? But I lost 5. Shen Chuwei raised 5 fingers to indicate a large number. Xiao Jinyan cruelly told the truth, even if they don't die now, you will eat them in the future. Shen Chuwei said, how can it be the same? Chickens and ducks have to die, some are lighter than a feather, some are heavier than Mount Tai. Filling your and my stomachs is also a place of death. We eat together, not just me. In the last sentence, Shen Chuwei deliberately used a family tone. When Xiao Jinyan heard us, a smile appeared in his eyes. I will send someone to find out who is so vicious and poisoned innocent chickens and ducks. Shen Chuwei nodded vigorously, you must give an explanation. Xiao Jinyan laughed softly, can I rest now? You can rest. Shen Chuwei took off her shoes and climbed onto the bed. As soon as she climbed up, she was hugged by Xiao Jinyan. Shen Chuwei's body was very soft. Although she looked thin, she still had meat where it should be. The meat on her body was also soft, and it was very comfortable to hug. Xiao Jinyan lowered his head and kissed her lips, searching for memories and exploring all the way. Xiao Jinyan always thought that he had no interest in women until he met Shen Chuwei, especially after the marriage was consummated. He found that he would become addicted once he got involved. Before this, he would not believe that he was now a little addicted to bed, only to her. When Shen Chuwei saw Xiao Jinyan like this, she knew that he must have brought the sachet with him again. She touched it randomly and found the sachet on the side of her waist. She just couldn't understand why he carried such an ugly sachet with him. And the smiley face on it was really embarrassing. Shen Chuwei wanted to find a chance to throw the sachet away, and threw it far away so that Xiao Jinyan couldn't find it. While Xiao Jinyan was immersed in it, she was about to take the opportunity to pull it off, but was discovered by Xiao Jinyan. Her hand was tightly held by the big hand and pressed back on the bed, looking down at her. What are you thinking about? Shen Chuwei shook her head guiltily, I'm not thinking about anything. Xiao Jinyan's breathing was a little heavy, then why are you distracted? Shen Chuwei looked curious, how do you know I'm distracted? Xiao Jinyan was so angry that he laughed, can't you feel it? Shen Chuwei shook his head. Xiao Jinyan stared at her for a few seconds, letting her experience what distraction is for herself. Shen Chuwei opened her eyes and pushed Xiao Jinyan away, what's wrong with you? Xiao Jinyan said righteously, you were just like that. Shen Shuwei was embarrassed. Then let's continue. I promise not to be distracted. Xiao Jinyan smiled softly, as she wished. In the second half of the night, Shen Shuwei couldn't hold on any longer, so she said very considerately, Jinyan, it's good to arrange your time properly. Xiao Jinyan said and then there was no more. Shen Shuwei protested directly, I want to adjust my day off. Xiao Jinyan asked, what do you mean? Shen Shuwei asked, I will have a baby in the future, right? Xiao Jinyan nodded. Shen Shuwei asked again, after having a baby, can't I do strenuous exercise? Xiao Jinyan nodded again. Shen Shuwei continued, I will adjust my day off with the time when I had a baby. Xiao Jinyan. Xiao Jinyan understood some of it, but he was not stupid. Is it still considered an adjustment if it is now adjusted with the time when I had a baby? No. Shen Shuwei protested, then you can borrow and book, but I can't adjust my day off. Xiao Jinyan snorted, don't be cunning. Shen Shuwei said in her soft voice, I'm serious. It's okay to change it? Before Xiao Jinyan finished speaking, Shen Shuwei was afraid that he would regret it, so she immediately made a hammer, it's a deal. Xiao Jinyan nodded, yeah. Shen Shuwei fell asleep peacefully. But later, Shen Shuwei cried and shouted, I regret it. The next day, after Shen Shuwei woke up, she remembered that she wanted to take the sachet last night, but she didn't take it. She sighed, or wait until the embroidery on her hand is finished, and then change it back. When Chun 11 came in, she heard Shen Chu slightly sighing. Little master, what's wrong with you? Are you sighing so early in the morning? It's okay, just keep me alive. Chun 11 and Shen Shuwei had been together for so long, and they immediately understood the meaning of extending their lives, which was to have a good meal. After Shen Shuwei regained his strength, he continued to embroider the sachet. Concubine Su walked into the Hehuan hall with Tao Chenjui waving her handkerchief. Before the people arrive, the sound arrives first. Shen Liangdi. Shen Chu raised his head slightly and saw them walking over quickly. She asked Concubine Su, what were you running for yesterday? Concubine Su took out a banknote from her arms and handed it to Shen Shuwei, look. Shen Shuwei picked it up and took a look at the 5,000 taels of silver notes in confusion. And mine Tao Chenjui also took out a banknote and gave it to Shen Shuwei. Shen Shuwei took it over and took a look at it. 10,000 taels of silver notes. She raised her head and looked at the two people in front of her, what are you doing? Concubine Su said with a smile, didn't you say you were short of money? This is for you. Tao Chenjui also said, this is all I have with me for now, you take it first. Shen Shuwei was stunned. 15,000 taels of silver was quite a lot of money. I gave these to you, what about you? Concubine Su said nonchalantly, I'm fine. My mother-in-law's family will provide me with subsidies. Don't worry about me. I have nothing else but a lot of money. I just need to tell my father and he will give me a large sum of money immediately, Tao Chenjui said nonchalantly. Shen Shuwei was a little embarrassed to accept it, but was pushed back and forth by the two people, so he accepted it, maybe it would be useful in the future. Concubine Su said indignantly, by the way, that shameless guy is pestering your highness again. Come on, let's go too. Good night, my dears. Updated 2 chapters in the early morning. Acting like a coquettish girl, please give me monthly votes and recommendation votes. Staying up late typing, my hair is bald, what a miserable author. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 262. As soon as Shen Shuwei picked up the embroidery needle, she was stunned when she heard Concubine Su's words, shameless. She's Princess Shuiyan. She's still a girl. Isn't it shameless to pester His Highness no matter what? Concubine Su said confidently. Tao Chenjui couldn't hold it back, covered his mouth with a handkerchief and laughed out loud, "Ha ha, who makes our highness so handsome that no one can match him?" Shen Shuwei nodded in agreement upon hearing this. So far, he has never seen a man more handsome than Xiao Jinyan. Xiao Jinyan was both civil and military, and he was also a prince, so it was normal for Shui Yan to like him. Seeing Shen Shuwei pick up the embroidery needle, concubine Su advised, "Stop embroidering, let's go see how that shameless man wants to seduce his highness. It won't work if you don't embroider. It's needed urgently." Shen Shuwei thought about finishing the embroidery in these 2 days, so she took off the sachet that Xiao Jinyan was carrying close to her body. "It's good for him and me." Concubine Su exclaimed, "We are not in a hurry right now. The most important thing now is to prevent the shameless seduction of his highness." Shen Chu slightly raised his head and looked at Concubine Su. She rolled up her sleeves and looked like she was going to catch the traitor. She reassured her, "We have to trust your highness." "Shen Liangdi, did his highness give you ecstasy? Why are you so easily deceived? Look at how many children the emperor, 3 palaces and 6th courtyard have under his knees. Concubine Ning still has one in her belly, and there are rumors that the emperor and queen are loving each other. Very, if there is true love, where did those children come from?" Concubine Su tried to wake Shen Shuwei out of love. Compared to Concubine Su's excitement, Tao Chenjui was relatively calm. "I think what Concubine Su said is somewhat reasonable. Although his highness is not a womanizer, he is still a man, and it is difficult for men to withstand temptation." Shen Shuwei nodded vigorously in agreement, "What you said makes sense." Concubine Su said, "Let's go then. I heard that Princess Suiyan invited your highness to enjoy the lotus flowers. The lotus flowers bloomed very early this year." Shen Shuwei did not leave but raised the sachet in his hand to show them, "I also want to embroider." Concubine Su hated Tai Cheng Gang, "Don't you like female celebrities? I won't embroider this after I finish embroidering this." Shen Shuwei felt a little bitter and couldn't express it. If she hadn't been smart, she wouldn't have had to embroider in a hurry. Concubine Su stared at Shen Shuwei for a long time, somewhat confused. "Are you really not worried that his highness will be snatched away by that shameless person?" Shen Shuwei still said the same thing, "We must believe in his highness." Concubine Su: "I believe in a ghost." Tao Chenjui. In the end, Shen Shuwei was pulled out by Concubine Su. The reason was, if a man's words can be believed, pigs can climb trees. Shen Shuwei. Concubine Su was completely led astray by her. No, she was led astray by romance novels. Arriving at the lotus pond, Tao Chenjui saw Chang Liangyuan coming slowly. "What are you doing here, Chang Liangyuan?" Concubine Su snorted, "The crown prince's position is about to be taken away. Can she not be in a hurry?" Chang Liangyuan was not surprised at all when she saw Shen Liangdi and the others. She stepped forward and said, "Concubine Su, Shen Liangdi, are you here too?" Concubine Su held up her temples and said, "Chang Liangyuan can't go out of the front door or the second door. She takes 3 steps, panting, 10 steps, and coughs. How can she have the time to go out for a walk now?" The word fangfeng was learned from romance novels, implying that Chang Liangyuan felt like she was in jail every day. Shen Chu slightly understood the meaning of the sentence and found that after Concubine Su read the romance novel, she even used some modern words to criticize people. Chang Liangyuan looked a little unhappy when she heard this. Since she was punished, Concubine Su had become more and more careless in speaking, which also made her very disgusted. The imperial doctor said that if you are not in good health, you should go out for walks and bask in the sun, which is good for your health. Concubine Su withdrew her gaze and looked at Princess Suiyan and Xiao Jinyan, who were not far away. She deliberately raised her voice and said, "Princess Suiyan is really of noble status. Your Highness personally came to accompany her to enjoy the lotus flowers." Chang Liangyuan heard the news and went to see Xiao Jinyan coming to accompany Shui Yan. She clenched the handkerchief in her hand. A few days ago, Chang Liangyuan went to see the queen, and through indirect questioning and probing, she learned that Princess Suiyan was the most favored daughter of King Suiyu, with a generous dowry. Whoever marries Princess Suiyan will have the Suiyu kingdom and a generous dowry behind her. Xiao Jinyan is the prince, and there is no reason to refuse before interests. When Chang Liangyuan looked away, she found Shen Shuwei and Su's concubine Tao Chenjui boarding a small boat. They just have their own thoughts. Do they really think they are good sisters? In this palace, because of favor, even sisters can turn against each other, let alone those who are not related by blood. In order to win favor, didn't Chen Mingzhu attack his own sister? Chang Liangyuan snorted, looked back at Xiao Jinyan, walked over waving a small handkerchief, and said, "May you be blessed, Your Highness." Then he blessed Shuiyan again, "Princess." Shuiyan stared at Chang Liangyuan with a puzzled look on her face. "Chang Liangyuan, why are you here?" Chang Liangyuan said softly, "I heard that there is a lily in the lotus pond, and it is the only one that blooms early, so I came over to have a look out of curiosity." Xiao Jinyan saw Shen Shuwei coming from a distance. He thought Shen Shuwei would be the same as last time, with a smile just appearing in her eyes, but when he saw her getting on a small boat, her eyes paused and the smile disappeared instantly. Xiao Jinyan looked away and looked at Chang Liangyuan, changing his previous indifference and aloofness. "I heard that Chang Liangyuan has been feeling unwell these past few days. Is he feeling better?" Chang Liangyuan hadn't heard Xiao Jinyan speaking to her in a gentle voice for a long time, but now that she heard it, she was stunned for a few seconds. Flattered. She smiled, "Your Highness, I am much better now. Thank you for your concern." Xiao Jinyan said, "Since you are here, let's go to the lake to enjoy the lotus flowers together." Chang Liangyuan was just trying to find a reason to go with her, but she didn't expect Xiao Jinyan to take the initiative to bring it up. She was overjoyed and said, "I obey your command." Suiyan glanced at Chang Liangyuan. It was originally a date for 2 people, but it turned into a date for 3 people. No one would be happy. Xiao Jinyan took the lead and walked towards the cruise ship. Suiyan and Chang Liangyuan boarded the cruise ship one after another. After Xiao Jinyan came up, he glanced at the small boat not far away. He couldn't understand why Shen Shuwei didn't come to find him. Suiyan was a little impatient. "Your Highness, let's go." "Yes." Xiao Jinyan ordered Wei Qi to set off. Suiyan looked up at Xiao Jinyan, her eyes full of excitement. "Your Highness, I heard that the twin lotus is a rare sight, and it bloomed early, which should be a good sign. I can't wait to see what the twin lotus looks like." Xiao Jinyan nodded. The twin lotus is indeed a rare sight. Chang Liangyuan looked at Suiyan's every move, and she must have fallen in love with Xiao Jinyan. "My aunt said that Suiyan was the most suitable to marry Xiao Jinyan. But she didn't think so. It is my honor to watch this wonder with your Highness. Good afternoon. I'm a little stuck and have a headache. By the way, please vote. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 263. Chang Liangyuan looked at Shuiyan with a smile. "Princess Shuiyan, what do you think?" "That's natural. It's my first time in Daxia and I can see Bingdilian. I'm still with His Highness. Yanner is very happy, son." Xiao Jinyan said calmly, "The princess is lucky and can enjoy the wonders as soon as she comes." Shuiyan was a little disappointed when she didn't hear the name she wanted to hear. Thinking of Bingtilian, she said excitedly, "Your Highness, when you see Bingtilian later, can you pick it off and give it to me?" Chang Liangyuan sneered in her heart when she heard this. "Princess Suiyan, the Bingtilian is a rare spectacle. If you ask His Highness to pick it off, wouldn't it be embarrassing for His Highness?" Why not let the Bingtilian bloom naturally and let more people come to watch it, wouldn't it? Better. Princess Swayan, don't you think so? Shui Yan was choked by these words. She looked at Xiao Jinyan aggrievedly. Your Highness, this is my first time seeing Bingtilian. I like it so much. I don't want to monopolize it. Xiao Jinyan nodded. I know. Shui Yangxian glanced at Chang Liangyuan, with a flash of disgust in her eyes. She looked at Xiao Jinyan. Your Highness, where is Bingtilian? Why haven't you arrived yet? Xiao Jinyan's eyes were always looking for Shen Shui's figure. The lotus pink figure entered the lotus pond and was quickly obscured by the dense lotus leaves, leaving no trace at all. He replied calmly with two words, soon. Lotus flowers usually bloom after June. Today, Lu 11 came to report that a lotus flower bloomed early in Tai Pond, and it was a double lotus flower. Shui Yan happened to hear it and asked him to take her to see it. Lotuses with two stems are rare and a good sign. The small boat taken by Shen Shui and the others was no slower than Xiao Jinyan's big boat. It was easier to move forward among the dense lotus leaves. Qin Xiao, who was rowing, followed Shen Shui when he came to Tai Pond to avoid accidents. Shen Shui saw a lotus from a distance, and it was a double lotus. She pointed to the double lotus with excitement. There really is a double lotus. Let me take a look. Concubine Su followed the direction of Shen Shui's finger and saw the parallel lotus. She was extremely excited. This is the first time I have seen the parallel lotus. Tao Chenjui also saw it. This is also the first time I've seen it. It seems to be two-color. As the boat gets closer, it becomes clearer. Shen Shu looked at the lotus and found that it was a two-color lotus, pink and purple, which became a bright spot among the green lotus leaves. After the boat approached, Concubine Su urged, Shen Liangdi, take it off and see what the shameless guy rewards you. Qin Xiao. Why does it feel like you are scolding Princess Swayan? Shen Shui nodded in agreement and said that Ti Lian could be taken back and kept in spiritual spring water for a long, long time. She stretched out her arm and picked off the Bingtilian 15 inches below the lotus. This is not an ordinary lotus, but a water lily, pink and purple, very beautiful. So beautiful. Tao Chenjui looked at the Bingtilian in Shen Shui's hand and said, it is indeed very beautiful. I heard that Bingtilian is rare to see. If you can see it, it means something good will happen. I've heard about it too. This is the first time I've seen Bingtilian in my life. Is something good going to happen? Concubine Su suddenly started to look forward to it. Shen Shui had never heard that anything good would happen if he saw Bingtilian, but this was indeed his first time seeing Bingtilian. I held her in the palm of my hand and told Qin Xiao, go back. Qin Xiao looked at the Bingtilian in Shen Shui's hand, but he didn't expect that she would just take it off. Going back now. Shen Shui raised the Bingtilian in his hand and showed it to Qin Xiao. Why don't you wait for His Highness to be embarrassed? Qin Xiao reacted immediately, paddled his hands quickly, and left the place of right and wrong as quickly as possible. Xiao Jinyan stood on the bow of the boat and saw a small boat emerging from the green, and then a touch of pink appeared in his sight. Shui Yan saw a small boat suddenly appear in Tai Pond. She was a little surprised until she saw the people on it. What are Shen Liangdi and the others doing? Chang Liangyuan also saw it, and she was a little lucky that they didn't come to this ship. Otherwise, there were so many people, and she wouldn't even have a chance to talk to Xiao Jinyan. She answered casually, I should also be here to admire the lotus flowers. Then why aren't they with us? Shui Yan looked at Xiao Jinyan doubtfully, expecting his answer. Xiao Jinyan's eyes were fixed on that pink figure, wondering why she didn't come to him this time, but went to appreciate the lotus alone with Su Concubine and the others, and didn't pay attention to Shui Yan's words. Shui Yan called out in confusion, Your Highness. Did you listen to my question? Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes and looked at Shui Yan. Yes, what's wrong? Shui Yan asked nonchalantly, is Shen Liangdi angry with me? She doesn't even go to appreciate the lotus flowers with us. Xiao Jinyan. He doesn't like women who act the same on the outside but hide the other behind their backs. This is why he doesn't like getting close to women. This is not the case for Shen Shuwei. Chang Liangyuan said tentatively, Princess Suiyan, you will marry into the East Palace sooner or later. Shen Liangdi will not be happy for a while. Shui Yan did not hide her thoughts and took advantage of this opportunity to make it clear. She smiled lightly, what Chang Liangyuan said is that we are all sisters in the future, so we should help each other and tolerate each other. Princess Suiyan said so. Chang Liangyuan snorted coldly in her heart, I won't let you take away the position of crown princess. Xiao Jinyan glanced at Chang Liangyuan after hearing this. Unexpectedly, she was still thinking about the position of the crown princess. Wei Qi reminded, Master, Bingdilian's location is right here. Princess Suiyan looked at only one green lotus leaf and saw nothing else. She looked confused and asked, where is Bingdilian? Why didn't you see it? Chang Liangyuan saw the Bingdilian held by Shen Shuwei not far away and frowned, Shen Liangdi took it off. Xiao Jinyan actually saw it just now. It was the parallel lotus that Shen Shuwei was holding. Shui Yan was very angry, but her voice was very soft, Your Highness, why did Shen Liangdi take off the lotus root? This way others can't see it. I don't know either, Xiao Jinyan said perfunctorily, and then said coldly, Go back. Qin Xiao brought the boat close to the shore and waited for the three young masters to come ashore. Chun 11 was waiting on the shore, and when she saw Qin Xiao, she hurriedly lowered her head and did not dare to raise her head for fear of being recognized by Qin Xiao. Qin Xiao couldn't help but feel a little anxious when he saw that the slave kept his head down. Don't be stunned, help Shen Liangdi quickly. If she falls, His Highness will blame you. You can't bear it? I'll help him right away. Chengzi didn't understand why Qin Xiao was so mean. Can she still let her mistress fall? Chengzi lowered her head and hurriedly stepped forward to help Shen Shuwei, Little master, please slow down. Qin Xiao looked at the three maids, and his eyes fell on Chun 11, but she kept her head down, always feeling that there was something wrong with this maid. Good evening, kids. This is the fourth chapter with an additional update from yesterday's recommendation vote, 8,000 words. Please give me monthly votes and recommendation votes. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 264. Chengzi didn't know what Qin Xiao was thinking. She just wanted to leave with her little master quickly, lest Qin Xiao recognize her as their little brother. Shen Shuwei didn't expect this. She looked back at concubine Su and Tao Chenjui and saw that they had both come down, so she continued walking forward. Tao Chenjui stared at the Bingdilian in Shen Shuwei's hand and said, Shen Liangdi, the Bingdilian needs to be raised with water, so that it can last longer. Shen Shu lowered her eyes slightly and looked at the water lily. The petals were so delicate that she didn't dare to touch them. I thought so too. I hope I can keep them for a month. Qin Xiao kept his eyes fixed on Chengzi. Seeing that she was sneaking around, she was particularly vigilant after staying with the prince for a long time. He took a few steps forward to stop Chengzi and said with a cold face, Stop. Chengzi was startled because of her guilty conscience, and subconsciously hugged Shen Shuwei's arm, shouting in her heart, Don't recognize me, otherwise it will be over. Shen Shu slightly raised his eyes and looked at Qin Xiao in confusion, Guard Qin, what are you doing? This was the first time Qin Xiao looked at Shen Shuwei head-on. He had never looked at her head-on before, and he didn't dare to look at her head-on, because Shen Shuwei was the master's woman, and looking directly at her was considered disrespectful. After seeing this, he was stunned. He is really similar to brother Shen, but he seems to be a little shorter. It's rare to see siblings look so similar. When Shen Shuwei wore men's clothing, he put boosting pads in his boots, which made him 7 centimeters taller than usual. Qin Xiao came to his senses. He pointed at Chengzi and said, "Shen Liangdi, she is sneaky and there is something wrong with her." Shen Chuwei lowered his head and glanced at Chun 11, only to see that she kept her head lowered. Suddenly she remembered the matter of a woman disguising herself as a man. Chun 11 was afraid of being recognized by Qin Xiao. She looked at Qin Xiao confidently, "Is she sneaking around?" Qin Xiao was stunned for a moment. It was so obvious. Shen Chuwei still couldn't see it. He clasped his hands in his fists. "My subordinate is suspicious, Shen Liangdi had better be careful." "I understand, Guard Qin, don't worry." After Shen Chuwei finished speaking, he took Chengzi and left. Qin Xiao stared at Chengzi for a long time, and didn't look back until they were out of his sight. When Wei Qi walked over, he saw Qin Xiao staring at the girl, his eyes full of reluctance. He stepped forward and patted Qin Xiao's shoulder hard. "What's wrong? Have you fallen in love with this girl?" Qin Xiao glared at Wei Qi. "What are you talking about? I just think she's a little suspicious." She lowers her head and looks guilty. Wei Qi nodded in appreciation. "That's right. You have accepted the little brother's love token, but you can't give up after all." Qin Xiao scolded, "What a token of love, don't talk nonsense." Wei Qi looked like I knew him very well. "I've seen it all, stop pretending, you're looking at things and thinking about people with a handkerchief in the middle of the night." Qin Xiao looked confused. He obviously dropped the handkerchief accidentally and couldn't return it to others. He saw it when he came back from the toilet in the middle of the night, so he picked it up. How could he see things and miss people? If Xiao Jinyan hadn't come this way, Qin Xiao would have beaten Wei Qi to make him talk nonsense. On the way back, Chengzi patted her chest and said, "Little master." Qin Xiao almost recognized him just now. "He is so fierce." Shen Chuwei explained, "He is His Highness's personal bodyguard. He is naturally different from ordinary people. He is highly vigilant. Don't you know whether he is fierce or not?" Chengzi recalled the scene of Qin Xiao helping her on the last trip, which was actually not too bad. "That's right, he just looks fierce sometimes." Returning to Hehuan Hall, Shen Chuwei asked Chengzi to get the fish tank, then put Bingdilian in it, and then took out the spiritual spring water from the space and put it into the fish tank. Water lilies nourished with spiritual spring water will bloom better and longer. At night, when Xiao Jinyan came, he saw water lilies in the fish tank on the low table. They were 2-color lotuses, which could be said to be rare to see in 1,000 years. He came to the couch and sat down, looking at Shen Chuwei. "You went to Tai Pond today, why didn't you come to see me?" Shen Chu said softly, "I am afraid of disturbing His Highness." Xiao Jinyan frowned, "How could you have such an idea?" Shen Chuwei pointed at the 2-color lotus flowers in the fish tank and said, "I picked the lotus flower with double stems." Xiao Jinyan looked at Shen Chuwei intently with her phoenix eyes and said, "I don't want to accompany Princess Suiyan to swim in Tai Pond with Princess Suiyan. Today is arranged by my mother, Xiaju, do you understand?" Shen Chuwei was lying on the low table, looking at the water lilies in the fish tank, and listening to Xiao Jinyan's explanation. Xiao Jinyan didn't wait for a response, and she couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable. She called out in a low voice, "Xiaoju." Shen Chu raised his eyes slightly and looked at Xiao Jinyan. "Your Highness, it is better to keep some distance from her." Xiao Jinyan's eyes paused when he heard this, and his eyebrows suddenly widened. "Xiaju, are you jealous?" Shen Chuwei said seriously, "I'm not jealous. I just ate dumplings 2 days ago. I don't want to eat dumplings these 2 days." Of course Xiao Jinyan knew that eating dumplings 2 days ago left a taste of jealousy in his mouth. "I'm not talking about dipping dumplings in vinegar." Shen Chu tilted his head slightly and asked seriously, "What kind of jealousy is your Highness talking about?" "White vinegar." Xiao Jinyan said helplessly, it's not just white vinegar. I don't know, I think it's best to eat dumplings dipped in old vinegar. After Shen Shuwei finished speaking, she suddenly wanted to eat dumplings again. Xiao Jinyan, why do you only know how to eat? Shen Shuwei said very righteously and confidently, food is the most important thing for people, and they will starve if they don't eat. Xiao Jinyan shook his head helplessly. Asterisk. After Lu Zaiyan returned to the palace, he was called over by the emperor. In the imperial study, the emperor sits on the dragon chair. The emperor said, Lord Lu, I plan to let Princess Suiyan marry the prince and make her the crown princess. Please calculate the fortune and which day is the most suitable. Lu Zaiyan lowered his eyebrows and nodded, Your Majesty, I need some time to observe the stars at night to accurately calculate your fortune. The emperor still trusts Lu Zaiyan. He nodded, Then I will give you 2 days. Reply to me in 2 days. Lu Zaiyan, your humble servant obeys your command. While observing the stars at night, Xiao Jinyan came. How? Lu Zaiyan said helplessly, Your Highness, the emperor only gave me 2 days. Xiao Jinyan, then you can do it, don't let me down. Lu Zaiyan looked embarrassed, Your Highness, this is a bit difficult. If you say that Princess Suiyan conflicts with you, it may cause dissatisfaction in the Suiya kingdom. Xiao Jinyan was silent for a long time and uttered a sentence, the crown princess cannot be her. This is Xiao Jinyan's bottom line. The crown princess must be Shen Shuwei, and he can only marry Xiaoju. Asterisk. Shen Shuwei spent 3 days to make the sachet. There was a smile embroidered on it. It was not a death smile, but a very naughty smile. Inside was a medicine pack for calming the nerves. She personally prepared the medicine, which helped with sleep. During dinner, Xiao Jinyan came. Good night, my dears. I am a little stuck. I have a headache from staying up late. I will update 1 chapter in the early morning. I will start to update 10,000 words during the day. I will start updating before lunch. I am begging for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets by acting cute. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 265. The dinner was very sumptuous, and because I wanted to eat dumplings, Chengzi prepared some. Shen Shuwei poured some vinegar for himself, raised his head and looked at Xiao Jinyan, Do you want to be jealous, Your Highness? Xiao Jinyan glanced at the large bottle of vinegar in Shen Shuwei's hand and thought of what she said about being jealous yesterday. I am not jealous. Your Highness, you don't know. The correct way is to eat dumplings dipped in vinegar, Shen Shuwei said, capping the bottle and putting it aside. Xiao Jinyan watched her dip the dumplings in vinegar and take a bite. The dumplings were so delicious that he could smell the sour taste of the vinegar. He did not mention that his father wanted Lu Zaiyan to calculate the time and marry Princess Shuiyan, not wanting to ruin the warm atmosphere at this moment. Shen Shuwei ate and drank enough and wiped his mouth with satisfaction. Xiao Jinyan was holding the teacup, but his eyes were looking at Shen Shuwei. Looking at her satisfied look, he took a sip of tea and accidentally burned his lips. He groaned hiss. Shen Shuwei heard a muffled sound and looked over worriedly, Your Highness, what's wrong with you? Xiao Jinyan shook his head, No problem. Who would have thought that the day would come when a noble prince would get burned while drinking tea? His Highness knows how to deceive his concubines. Shen Shu didn't believe it. She stood up and walked to Xiao Jinyan, staring at his handsome face for a long time. Her eyes finally fell on his lips, which were a little red. As a doctor, one glance it was obvious that he had been burned. Your Highness, please wait. She turned around and took out the medicine box, opened the lid, took out the scalding ointment, and walked over while twisting the lid open. Xiao Jinyan looked at her in confusion as she walked over with a small white jade bottle. What is this? My concubine, please put some burn ointment on you. It will be healed soon. Shen Shuwei dipped a little with his fingertips, leaned close to Xiao Jinyan, pressed his fingertips against his red lips, and then applied it gently so that the ointment could be quickly absorbed. Xiao Jinyan raised her eyes and looked at the person close to her. Her delicate eyebrows were lowered and her expression was very serious, just like her when she was painting. The ointment was cool and applied to the lips, and the burning sensation disappeared instantly. Shen Chuwei felt that the application was almost done, so he took back his hand and looked at him expectantly. "Your Highness, how do you feel?" Xiao Jinyan met those bright star eyes and praised without hesitation, "Xiaoju's ointment is very effective." Shen Chuwei was quite proud. "This is the best burn ointment. It works quickly and is non-irritating." Chengzi was accidentally scalded by hot oil while cooking, so she used this burn ointment without leaving any scars. After listening to the second half of the sentence, Xiao Jinyan felt it was a bit redundant. When there are two people, is it appropriate to mention another person? Did Xiaoju prepare the medicine herself? Shen Chuwei nodded seriously. "Well, it's a secret recipe passed down from ancestors, passed down from female to male." Xiao Jinyan, so powerful. Seeing that Xiao Jinyan believed it, Shen Chuwei smiled and said, "I'm just kidding." In modern times, Shen Chuwei was an orphan and grew up in an orphanage. She had never even met her parents, let alone her ancestors, let alone their secret recipes. Xiao Jinyan looked at her smiling face, and with the thought in his mind, he stretched out his long arms and hugged her into his arms. She was petite and soft, holding her in his arms like a ball of cotton. "Xiaoju is getting more and more courageous and knows that he is joking with me." Shen Chuwei said confidently, "His Royal Highness is too serious. Sometimes he is like a teacher. I can liven up the atmosphere by joking." Xiao Jinyan's eyes paused. "Do I have it?" "Yes," Shen Chuwei said with absolute certainty. "Don't you, Your Highness, usually look in the mirror?" Xiao Jinyan recalled getting up at 5 o'clock every day, before it was dark, and Lu 11 would take care of him when changing clothes and tying hair, and he didn't notice what he looked like at ordinary times. "I haven't paid attention to these. It has been 10 years since I smiled." "Your Highness has kept a straight face all day long, looking mature and solemn, without any of the wanton vigor that a young man should have." Xiao Jinyan said, "I am a prince and a prince. If I am not mature and prudent, how can I convince the public?" "What Your Highness said makes sense." Shen Chu clasped Xiao Jinyan's neck slightly and leaned into her ear and said, "Then in front of my concubine, Your Highness does not need to be mature and prudent." Xiao Jinyan was amused, but the smile was very shallow and difficult to detect. "When no one is around, call me Jin Yan." Shen Chuwei said, "I am used to calling Your Highness every day." Xiao Jinyan repeated, "Call me Jin Yan." Shen Chu's slightly pink lips uttered two words, "Jin Yan." Xiao Jinyan's hand clasped the back of her head and kissed her lips as a reward. There was a restless hand that kept teasing her. Shen Chuwei suddenly remembered the new sachet she had embroidered. She lowered her hands to her strong chest and managed to get a few words out of her mouth. "Your Highness, I still have." Xiao Jinyan increased his force as if punishing, and the second half of the sentence was stuck in his throat and could not be uttered. "What are you calling me for?" "Jin Yan." Shen Chu slightly grabbed Xiao Jinyan's lapel. The flat lapel was tightly held in her palms, and the golden dark patterned fabric was wrinkled. "I have something to say." "We'll talk about it later." Xiao Jinyan picked her up and strode towards the only bed in the room. Shen Chuwei was placed on the bed smoothly by Xiao Jinyan. Watching him put down the bed curtain, sometimes she felt that he was very particular, and he had to put down the bed curtain at this time. Although she was nervous, she couldn't help but laugh, and happened to be caught by Xiao Jinyan, who turned around. "What are you laughing at?" Shen Chuwei shook his head vigorously. "I'm not laughing at anything." Xiao Jinyan saw that she was lying at a glance. "What happy things can't you tell me?" Shen Chuwei sat up neatly from the bed, climbed up Xiao Jinyan's neck with both hands, and whispered in his ear, "Your Highness is a particular person." Xiao Jinyan thought it was something happy, but it turned out to be a joke about his particularity. Before Xiao Jinyan threw himself down, Shen Chuwei spoke first, "Jinyan, I will give you something." When Xiao Jinyan heard that there was a gift, he became interested. "Xiao Ju prepared a gift for me." Shen Chuwei nodded vigorously, "Yes, I prepared it myself." Xiao Jinyan's eyes showed expectation. "Let me see, what is the gift?" "I'll get it now." Shen Chuwei held Xiao Jinyan's shoulders with both hands, crossed over his thighs, lifted the bed curtain and got out of bed. She went to open the drawer, and when she came back, she had a pink object in her hand. Shen Chuwei climbed onto the bed neatly, held Xiao Jinyan's shoulders, crossed over his thighs again, and sat down beside him. "Jinyan, this is for you." She handed the sachet to Xiao Jinyan. "It is said that people get tired of the old and love the new. If you have a new sachet, you will definitely not want the old one." Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes to look at the object in her hand, and recognized it as a sachet at a glance. His slender fingers took the sachet from her hand and took it closer to look at it carefully. The whole sachet is made of pink fabric, and the pattern embroidered on it is also very simple. Not only simple, but also very familiar. "Good afternoon, my dears. I wrote a chapter before lunch. I am begging for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets by acting cute and coquettishly. There will be updates one after another. The code will be sent immediately. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 266. Chapter 266. Your Highness, throw it away. The queen is in a bad mood and wants to beat the dog emperor. The embroidery pattern is a smiley face, which is a little different from the small face on the sachet last year. This smiley face is obviously pleasing to the eye. Xiao Jinyan suddenly remembered that Shen Chuwei signed her wish last year with such a smiley face. After a year, Shen Chuwei's needlework has not improved much. The needlework is rough and not dense, and there are occasional skipped stitches. You can tell at a glance that she is a beginner. Shen Chuwei came over and reminded, "Jinyan, take out the old sachet for comparison. Only by highlighting the goodness of the new sachet can the old sachet be shown to be useless, and then throw it away." Xiao Jinyan raised her head and said, "How do you know that I carry the sachet with me?" Shen Chuwei blinked her beautiful big eyes guiltily, "I guessed." Xiao Jinyan did not comment. He took out the sachet from last year and placed it in front of the new sachet. Although the old sachet had been used for a year, it was still like new. In contrast, the smile on the new sachet is not only pleasing to the eye, but also a bit naughty. Shen Chuwei looked up at Xiao Jinyan. "Jinyan, is the sachet much better looking than last year's?" Xiao Jinyan nodded, "Yeah." Shen Chuwei laughed in her heart, and her pride was beyond words. But the next second, she saw Xiao Jinyan stack the two sachets together and put them next to the pillow. It was completely different from what she imagined. Shen Chuwei kindly reminded, "Jinyan, don't throw away the old sachet." Xiao Jinyan asked back, "Why throw it away?" Shen Chuwei said, "Because there is a new sachet. What do you need the old one for?" Xiao Jinyan only uttered two words, "Wear it." Shen Chuwei. Then wouldn't her new sachet be embroidered in vain? It's not a talisman, and carrying it with you won't save your life. Shen Chuwei fell asleep with depression. When Xiao Jinyan left in the morning, he took away two sachets. On the waistband, there is a white jade pendant tied with a black ribbon, in the shape of a unicorn, round and translucent, and the new sachet is tied with the jade pendant unicorn. The other one is put into the sleeve pocket. Shen Chuwei had just finished breakfast when the queen came. The queen is in charge of the 3 palaces and 6 courtyards. She has a lot of daily chores and rarely comes to the East Palace. She must have something to do today. Chengzi hurried in to remind Shen Shuwei to receive the emperor. When the queen came in, she saw Shen Shuwei half kneeling. After waving her hand to let her get up, she walked to the couch and sat down. Her eyes were quickly attracted by the lotus on the low table. The queen looked over and found that this was the lotus with 2 stems that Suiyan mentioned yesterday. Unexpectedly, it was a 2-color lotus with 2 stems, a wonder that is rare in 1,000 years, and it was picked by Shen Shuwei. Shen Shuwei stood up and waited on the side. The queen had looked enough and looked back at Shen Shuwei. Did you pick this lotus with 2 stems? Shen Shuwei replied in a low voice, Your Highness, I picked it myself. Hearing this, the queen's voice deepened, You are quite courageous. You dared to pick a 2-color lotus with 2 stems. Shen Shuwei lowered her eyebrows and nodded, I was greedy for a moment and didn't worry too much. The queen looked at the lotus with 2 stems, and her fingers painted with red cowdan stroked the purple petals. You are indeed a little greedy. You want to take the prince's lotus with 2 stems for yourself. Shen Shuwei didn't say anything. I know that the prince likes you and pampers you, but he is the prince, the future crown prince. The most important thing is not the love between children, but the country. Do you understand? The queen looked from the lotus with 2 stems to Shen Shuwei. Shen Shuwei said, I am a little woman, far inferior to the queen, and I don't understand so many great principles. The queen did not get angry when she heard this, but laughed, If you don't reach my position, you can't understand the meaning of this sentence. You are a person who dares to tell the truth. Shen Shuwei bowed, Queen, you are so kind. The queen was stunned at first, then laughed, This child. Shen Shuwei raised her eyes and glanced at the queen, but didn't dare to ask. Chengzi walked in and served tea with both hands. The queen took the teacup, took a sip of tea, and said leisurely, Princess Suiyan came to Daxia for marriage. You should have heard that Suiyan is the legitimate princess of Suiyu kingdom and came to Daxia with a rich dowry. Although Daxia won Suiyu this time, it did not gain any advantage, but suffered heavy losses. 2 days ago, I also asked Princess Suiyan what she thought. She fell in love with the prince. I and the emperor are also happy to see it happen. I have asked Lord Lu to observe the stars at night and choose an auspicious time. After the queen finished speaking, she looked up at Shen Shuwei, I came here today to tell you that even if Princess Suiyan does not enter the East Palace, there will be other women in the future. The queen and Princess Suiyan talked for a long time in the past 2 days. The lotus with 2 stems was picked by Shen Shuwei, and it was Princess Suiyan who accidentally let it slip. The queen drank a cup of tea and went back. Before leaving, she patted Shen Shuwei on the shoulder, After a few years, you will get used to it. When passing by the imperial garden, I saw the emperor and concubine Ning strolling in the garden. Concubine Ning's belly was already 7 or 8 months old. The imperial physician diagnosed her and said that it was a little prince. The emperor was very happy. Qing Ying reminded, the green cards for the newly selected girls have been customized. There were 4 newly selected girls, all of them were beautiful and about 15 or 16 years old. The queen couldn't help but curse inwardly, the dog emperor, the old cow eats tender grass. That night, Eunuch Hai from the Jing Shifang brought the green cards and asked the emperor to turn them over. The emperor just saw that there were still a pile of memorials to be approved, and then looked at a pile of green cards, and waved his hand, Tonight, go to the queen's palace. Yes, Eunuch Hai withdrew with the green card. The emperor looked at the pile of memorials in front of him, pointed at a pile of memorials that had not been moved, and ordered, Send these to the East Palace, it's time for the prince to learn. I obey your order. Eunuch Li came over, picked up the pile of unapproved memorials, and went to the East Palace. After reading the memorials on hand, the emperor stretched and went to Fenji Palace. After the queen took a bath, She planned to go to bed early, but she received news that the emperor would stay in Fenji Palace. What does the dog emperor mean by this? The queen did not plan to wait for the emperor. She lifted the quilt and lay down. She thought the emperor would review the memorials until late at night, but she had not fallen asleep for less than a quarter of an hour after lying down, and the dog emperor came. The queen simply pretended to be asleep. When the emperor saw that the queen had gone to bed, he asked someone to help him undress. After everyone left, the emperor sat at the head of the bed, and by the candlelight, he carefully looked at the queen. His slender fingers stroked the beautiful face, and his eyes fell on the wrinkles at the corners of the eyes. He couldn't help but sigh, "Time flies, you have crow's feet at the corners of your eyes." The queen heard it and couldn't help cursing, "You dog emperor, no one thinks you are dumb if you don't speak. Do you think you are still young? You really bring up the wrong topic." The emperor said again, "It's far from 15 years old." The queen resisted the urge to jump up and beat people. "Aren't the selected girls 15 years old? Get out of here." If it was the queen who was 15 or 16 years old, she would have turned over and beat people. "My dears, good afternoon. Please give me monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading." Author, Gongzi Yunsi. Chapter 267. The queen recalled that she also entered the palace at the age of 15, and became the crown princess because of her powerful family. When she was 15, she was the most beautiful woman in Daxia. She originally thought that she could fight on the battlefield with her father, but she was snatched away by the crown prince at that time. When she was 19, the crown prince ascended the throne, and she naturally became the queen. This time, it lasted for 20 years. In the past 20 years, her temper has been worn out. Now she is as clear as a mirror in her heart. The dog emperor wanted to marry her because her family had generations of military generals and had made great military achievements. She would be a powerful helper for him. If she was the daughter of an ordinary official family, he would not be in a hurry to marry her. Now she is 40 years old, and she is obviously well maintained. Where are the crow's feet? Speaking of which, staring at a teenage woman every day and then looking at a 40-year-old woman is naturally different. The emperor sat at the head of the bed, staring at the queen for a long time, then slipped on the bed and hugged the queen in his arms. "Ling-er, why are you sleeping so deeply?" Even though they were already an old couple, the queen still lay like a mountain, too lazy to pay attention to the emperor. The emperor was not sleepy at this time. He supported his head with one hand, put his hand on the queen's waist, fumbled for a while, and pinched the queen's waist again. The queen, "Just hug, can you not use your hands?" Just as the queen was trying to calm her anger, the emperor said something that deserved a beating, "Ling-er, have you gained weight recently?" The queen clenched her fists. The two major issues that women don't like to be mentioned the most are aging and weight. Who wouldn't be angry when the dog emperor asked them? The emperor saw that the queen still had no signs of coming, and he couldn't sleep again. He stared at the queen's beautiful face for a while, and then moved his eyes down to the queen's lips. The slender fingers followed, stroking the queen's lips with the tip of his fingers, and said something that deserved a beating, "Ling-er, your lips are not as pink as before." The queen clenched her fists again, unable to bear it. She suddenly opened her eyes, and a shadow fell in front of her. Before she could react, she was bitten by the emperor. This kiss was very long. The queen seriously suspected that the emperor was here to murder her. When she almost thought she was going to die, the dog emperor finally let her go. The emperor pinched the queen's face, "Ling-er, you finally woke up." The queen looked at the emperor dimly, "Is the emperor done so soon?" The light was very dim inside the bed. The emperor could not see the queen's eyes clearly. "There are still a bunch of memorials, I ordered someone to send them to the prince for review." No wonder the dog emperor rested so early tonight, It turned out that he was lazy. Don't you dislike my lips that are not as pink as before? You still bite? The emperor kissed the queen. Ling take the initiative this time. The queen couldn't help rolling her eyes. Don't you dislike me for having crow's feet? Don't you dislike me for being old? Don't you dislike me for being fat? The emperor grabbed the queen's hand. Ling undress me. The queen squeezed out a word from her teeth. I want to rest. The emperor hugged the queen. It's still early. The queen. I dislike you too. Asterisk Eastern Palace. Hehuan Palace. After Xiao Jinyan finished bathing, he came to the bed and sat down. The investigation results show that it was a young eunuch who poisoned the chickens and ducks. Shen Shuwei didn't understand, why did the young eunuch poison the chickens and ducks? The chickens and ducks didn't provoke him. The young eunuch was originally working in Lanyu Palace. Shen Liangyuan was punished to the cold palace, and the young eunuch was arranged to do rough work. He was grateful for his kindness, so he thought of poisoning. Xiao Jinyan explained it briefly. Shen Shuwei realized that it was because of this that her chickens and ducks were poisoned. As soon as Xiao Jinyan got on the bed, Lu 11's shrill voice came from outside. Your Highness, Eunuch Li is here. Eunuch Li was a servant in front of the emperor. When he came to Hehuan Palace to find someone, he knew that there was something important. You take a rest first, Xiao Jinyan said to Shen Shuwei, then he began to put on his clothes, opened the door and walked out. Outside the door, Eunuch Li was waiting with a pile of memorials. Eunuch Li, what's the matter? Eunuch Li took 2 steps forward with a smile. Your Highness, the Emperor asked me to send these memorials to Your Highness for review. Xiao Jinyan's eyes flashed with surprise. My father asked me to review the memorials. He has been the crown prince for more than a year, and his father has never mentioned letting him read the memorials. Now that he suddenly lets him read them, does it mean that his father is slowly giving up power? Eunuch Li smiled and nodded. Your Highness, yes, that's what the Emperor means. Lu 11 stepped forward and took the memorials from Eunuch Li's arms. Xiao Jinyan, thank you, Eunuch Li. After Eunuch Li left, Xiao Jinyan turned and walked into the inner room. Shen Shuwei sat at the head of the bed, not knowing what was going on, and asked in confusion, Your Highness, what's wrong? Xiao Jinyan paused and said, My father has asked me to review the memorials. Under the calm voice, there was an excitement that could not be concealed. What Shen Shuwei thought was, does Your Highness have to work overtime? Xiao Jinyan nodded, well, you take a rest first, I will come back after dealing with those memorials. After Xiao Jinyan left, Shen Shuwei lay down, closed her eyes and began to sleep. The lights were bright in the study. Xiao Jinyan sat in front of the desk, looking at a pile of unreviewed memorials. He took them from top to bottom, opened them, and reviewed them. This was his first time reviewing memorials, so he was inevitably a little excited. The next morning, Xiao Jinyan took the reviewed memorials to the imperial study. The emperor was lazy last night, but he spent a long time with the empress, so he worked overtime. He looked at the memorials reviewed by the prince. The prince wrote well and clearly, and did not disappoint the emperor. The prince is becoming more and more capable. In the future, you should also review the memorials, the emperor said in a high-sounding manner, but in fact he began to be lazy. Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyebrows and nodded, your son obeys your order. On the way back to the East Palace, Xiao Jinyan was assassinated again. No one expected that there would be an assassin in the palace. Even more unexpectedly, the assassin was so bold that he dared to assassinate the prince in broad daylight. The assassin was highly skilled in martial arts and was good at using hidden weapons. Xiao Jinyan was unable to dodge and injured his arm. When the imperial guards arrived, the assassin saw that he had failed and left in an instant. This incident alarmed the entire palace. The emperor was furious and sent the imperial guards to search for the assassin strictly, not letting go of any suspicious person. Hehuan Palace. Xiao Jinyan's clothes were half pulled back, revealing his entire arm. After Shen Shuwei's treatment, the bleeding on his strong arm not only stopped, but also the poison was removed. Shen Shuwei looked at the pool of black blood on the ground, and her delicate brows wrinkled into a ball. The poison on the hidden weapon is a very tricky poison. It requires 9 kinds of poison to fight poison with poison, and if the amount is not controlled well, it will poison the poison. If it weren't for her Lingquan water, I'm afraid Xiao Jinyan would have died. Shen Shuwei looked at Xiao Jinyan with some concern. Your Highness, who wants to kill you? Xiao Jinyan frowned. I don't know, but the assassin this time is the same person as last time. Asterisk. Today is the deadline. Without waiting for the emperor to summon him, Lu Zaiyan came by himself. My dear children, good evening. These days, my dear children always ask when the twins will come. It should be soon, and will appear in a special plot. By the way, please give me a monthly ticket, please give me a ticket. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 268. Active reporting is more credible than passive reporting. The emperor was about to summon Lu Zaiyan, but when he saw him coming by himself, he asked, Lord Lu, how is the prince's marriage going? Lu Zaiyan took 2 steps forward and bowed. Your Majesty, I have observed the stars these past 2 nights and found that the Kanglang star is in the direction of the East Palace. Today, the prince was assassinated, which also indicates that your highness should not marry a princess. The emperor frowned when he heard this. Then when can you marry a princess? Lu Zaiyan lowered his eyebrows and nodded. Your Majesty, I have calculated that it is most appropriate to marry a princess in a year. The emperor's eyes darkened. After a year, can Princess Suiyan wait for a year? A year is not long, but it is not short either. After Lu Zaiyan left, the emperor went to Fenji Palace. The queen had just come back from visiting the prince and ran into the emperor. Thinking of what happened last night, the queen was so angry that her teeth itched. The dog emperor obviously disliked her in various ways, hugging and biting her last night. Why is the emperor here? The emperor sighed. Lord Lu just came to the imperial study, and the results are out. The queen asked, what did Lord Lu say? The emperor said, Lord Lu observed the stars at night, and the Kanglang star was in the East Palace, saying that the prince should not marry a princess. The prince's assassination this time is related to this. The queen looked worried. I just went to see the prince. He was seriously injured, and the hidden weapon was poisonous. If he was not rescued in time, I am afraid his life would be in danger. The emperor, it seems that it is really impossible to marry a princess at present. It will take a year. The queen pondered for a moment and said, then I will go to Princess Suiyan to talk to her. The emperor nodded, yes. After hearing what the queen said, Suiyan's face looked a little bad. Queen, if Lord Lu is telling the truth, then don't I have to wait for a year? The daylily is cold in a year. The queen said faintly, what I mean is that you should first enter the East Palace as the prince's concubine. This is the best plan at the moment. Suiyan hesitated a little. She was a princess, and being a concubine was not what she wanted. But she was unwilling not to marry Xiao Jinyan. After thinking about it, Suiyan nodded. When the queen saw Suiyan nod, she spoke, the prince was assassinated. When his injuries stabilize, you will be appointed as a concubine and live in the East Palace. Suiyan nodded, Queen, I will go to visit His Highness. The queen said, then you go. The prince's injuries are quite serious. Suiyan got up and went to the East Palace impatiently. Hehuan Palace. Shen Shuwei said angrily, the assassin is too bad. The poison is too insidious. It's all deadly. Wen Yuyi was a little ashamed, this time, thanks to Shen Liangdi, otherwise His Highness would be in danger again this time. Shen Shuwei was also secretly glad that he had Lingquan water. Otherwise, no matter how good his medical skills were, he would need time to prepare the medicine. And the poison didn't give you time to prepare it, and you died of poison. The assassin is a person who is good at using poison. The assassin is a martial arts expert and is also good at using poison. It seems that he came prepared. Xiao Jinyan clenched his fists. If he hadn't been sent to another country as a hostage at the age of 8, he wouldn't have abandoned his martial arts. Not only that, he also lost 6 years of memory. The 6 years of being a hostage in another country disappeared. After returning to Daxia, he tried many ways but failed to restore his memory. It is still most important to catch the assassin as soon as possible. If he comes unexpectedly next time, I'm afraid. Lu was very worried. At this time, the eunuch came in to report, "Your Highness, Princess Suiyan is here." As soon as the voice fell, Suiyan came in a white gauze dress. Seeing Xiao Jinyan, she was a little worried. "Your Highness, is your injury better?" Xiao Jinyan's voice was cold and distant. "It's much better." Suiyan took out a small emerald green bottle from her sleeve pocket and handed it to Xiao Jinyan. "This is the muscle coagulating cream from my Suiya kingdom. It is very effective in healing wounds." Xiao Jinyan glanced at the muscle coagulating cream in Suichuan's hand. "Thank you, Princess Suiyan." Lu 11. Lu 11 took 2 steps forward and stretched out his hand to take the muscle coagulating cream from Suiyan's hand. Suiyan hesitated for a while, then gave the muscle coagulating cream to Lu 11. Lu 11 took the muscle coagulating cream and stepped aside. Suiyan looked at Xiao Jinyan. "Your Highness, do you want to go for a walk?" "I'll go out with you." Shen Shuwei said, "Your Highness was seriously injured and just got rid of the poison. He needs to stay in bed to rest." Xiao Jinyan followed and said, "I'm tired and want to rest for a while." Suiyan was a little disappointed, and then she curved her eyebrows. "Okay, when your Highness is better, I'll go out with you again." When Lu Zayan came, Xiao Jinyan woke up from a nap. Xiao Jinyan and Shen Shuwei were the only ones in the room. Shen Shuwei was sitting at the low table preparing medicine. Lu Zayan stepped forward to salute, and then came to the bed. He saw that Xiao Jinyan's face looked a little bad, and it seemed that he was seriously injured. It is said that fortune and misfortune are interdependent, and this sentence is not false at all. It is precisely because Xiao Jinyan was assassinated this time that his words are more convincing. However, what he said about Kang Langstar comparing to the East Palace is not false at all. "Your Highness, the Emperor has believed what I said." Xiao Jinyan breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. Suiyan was a princess. If she could not become the crown princess, she might have given up entering the Eastern Palace. He could feel that his father was slowly giving up power. In less than 2 years, he would be able to control everything. Lu Zayan hesitated for a while, but still reported truthfully, "However, I observed the stars at night. The Kanglang star was in the direction of the Eastern Palace. Your Highness might be in danger of life and death. If you can't avoid the calamity of life and death, you will die." Xiao Jinyan was stunned. He didn't expect that he would encounter a life or death disaster. Shen Shuwei, who was preparing the medicine, heard it. She raised her head and looked at Lu Zayan doubtfully. "Master Lu, what is the calamity of life and death?" Lu Zayan replied, "The calamity of life and death is just a walk through the gates of hell." Shen Shuwei asked, "Is there a way to avoid it?" Lu Zayan said, "There is a way." "What can I do?" Shen Shuwei put down the medicine in his hand and walked over, stopping in front of Lu Zayan. Lu Zayan said, "Shen Liangbi has her own good fortune and can help His Highness avoid life and death." This was what Lu Zayan calculated by looking at Shen Shuwei's face. Not only can he read palms, but he can also read faces. Shen Shuwei was stunned for a moment when he heard this. Mr. Lu was really amazing. He even knew that she was lucky. She does bring her own luck, but her luck has limits. For example, last year during a hunting trip in autumn, I easily obtained the blood phoenix, but was hit by an arrow. Xiao Jinyan asked with a calm look, "What do you mean? I want to take Shen Shuwei with me from time to time." Lu Zaiyan looked at Xiao Jinyan, "This is the best way." Xiao Jinyan asked again, "When I am in danger, won't she also be in danger?" Lu Zaiyan was stunned for a moment. Wei Can didn't consider this. Xiao Jinyan said coldly, "You said you couldn't have calculated it carefully before." Shen Chu slightly raised his hand and said, "Your Highness, I can do it. There are updates. Please give me monthly votes and recommendation votes." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Yun Si. Chapter 269. Xiao Jinyan said coldly, "Shut up." He remembered that Shen Shuwei almost died because of saving him during the autumn hunting last year. He also remembered that Shen Shuwei almost died for testing poison for him on New Year's Eve. He couldn't let such a thing happen again. "Why are you so fierce? You will affect my enthusiasm for speaking in the future." Shen Shuwei raised her hand awkwardly in the air, and she held that hand with her other hand and broke it off. Xiao Jinyan also found that his tone was too cold and hard, so he softened his tone and said, "I just don't want you to get involved in danger." The assassin was very skilled in martial arts, and he was afraid that he would not be able to protect her. Shen Shuwei said in a low voice, "Lord Lu said that I have good luck and can avoid danger." Xiao Jinyan retorted, "Then you were shot by an arrow and poisoned by eating crabs. Did you avoid these?" Shen Shuwei clasped her fingers and glanced at Xiao Jinyan, and saw his serious expression. "Because of my good luck, my life is not in danger." Xiao Jinyan stared at Shen Shuwei for a long time before slowly speaking, "I won't let you take risks." Lu Zaiyan looked at Xiao Jinyan's affectionate gaze and felt helpless. He looked at Xiao Jinyan after realizing it. He was so afraid that Shen Shuwei would get hurt, so he must be moved, right? Definitely moved. Lu Zaiyan looked at Shen Shuwei as if he had discovered a new world. Although he had met her several times, he couldn't help but look up and down at this woman who moved Xiao Jinyan. Needless to say, her appearance is stunning. The face is rich and powerful. No, he found that Shen Shuwei's face seemed to have changed a little. Xiao Jinyan found that Lu Zaiyan's warm eyes had been staring at Shen Shuwei. Last time he wanted to touch Shen Shuwei's hand, and now he was staring at Shen Shuwei again. He said in a deep voice, "Lord Lu." Lu Zaiyan was about to read Shen Shuwei's face again. Hearing this, he looked at Xiao Jinyan with doubt, "Your Highness." Xiao Jinyan said coldly, "You can go back." Lu Zaiyan's attention was on Shen Shuwei's face, and he didn't notice Xiao Jinyan's gloomy face. "Wait, let me take another look." "Take another look?" Xiao Jinyan snorted coldly. "Lu 11, send Lord Lu out." Lu 11 smiled and took 2 steps forward. "Lord Lu, please." Lu Zaiyan felt a chill on his back at this time. He looked at Lu 11, which was clearly driving him away. The prince was unhappy, so of course he had to withdraw. Following Lu 11 out of the Hehuan palace, Lu Zaiyan was still depressed. Did he say the wrong thing? Otherwise, why would Xiao Jinyan be angry? Asterisk. Xiao Jinyan knew that Suiyan was willing to enter the East Palace as a concubine at night. The emperor came to see his injury and mentioned this matter by the way. Xiao Jinyan didn't expect Suiyan to back down. He thought Suiyan might wait for a year. 1 year later, he was sure to let Shen Shuwei become the crown princess. Crown prince, Princess Suiyan entered the East Palace as a concubine. Don't treat her badly. This was the last sentence the emperor said before leaving. Xiao Jinyan sneered. A few days ago, he made it clear in both open and covered ways. She clearly knew that I had no feelings for her, but she still wanted to enter the East Palace. Treat her badly? She didn't cause trouble, so I could let her occupy the position of a concubine. If you use tricks and schemes to do something harmful, don't blame me. Xiao Jinyan told Shen Shuwei about this. It was Suiyan who insisted on entering the East Palace, and the emperor has agreed. I know Shen Shuwei prepared the medicine, using precious medicinal materials. Xiao Jinyan will change it after taking a bath. Xiao Jinyan looked at Shen Shuwei's indifferent reaction. Although she had been informed in advance, she seemed indifferent now, and she felt depressed. Xiaoju. Shen Shuwei raised her head and looked at Xiao Jinyan. Your Highness, what's wrong? Nothing. Xiao Jinyan instructed. After Suiyan entered the East Palace, you should keep your distance from her. She is not simple. Xiao Jinyan had contact with Suiyan several times. She looked simple, but she was not. Her words were trying to sow discord between him and Shen Shuwei. Shen Shuwei stared at Xiao Jinyan, and looked at his serious and handsome face for a long time. She always felt that he treated her as a child, and she was not stupid. She still nodded obediently. I know. When concubine Su heard the news, she was furious. On the way to Hehuan Palace, she swung her handkerchief very fast. Tao Chenjui followed concubine Su closely and reminded her, Concubine Su, slow down. It's urgent. How can I slow down? Concubine Su walked into Hehuan Palace without looking back. Tao Chenjui shook his head helplessly and followed her in. Shen Liangdi, that shameless guy wants to enter the East Palace to compete with you for the position of Highness. Concubine Su's voice arrived before her. The volume was quite loud, and many people heard it. Everyone in Hehuan Palace was used to it. Unfortunately, Xiao Jinyan had just woken up from resting in the room and was changing clothes. When Xiao Jinyan heard the voice, he guessed it was concubine Su. Shameless, is it Princess Suiyan? Shen Shuwei heard concubine Su's unrestrained complaints outside the room, and she was so embarrassed that she couldn't help complaining in her heart, Big sister, before you howl, can you confirm whether Xiao Jinyan is here? See, Xiao Jinyan heard it all. Xiao Jinyan lowered his eyes and looked at Shen Shuwei. Is concubine Su always like this? Not really. Shen Shuwei tried to explain, Your Highness, concubine Su is just outspoken. Xiao Jinyan snorted and didn't comment. After concubine Su howled, she got no response. She thought Shen Shuwei was probably resting, so she continued to walk inside. Concubine Su shouted as she walked, Shen Liangdi, are you still sleeping? Your man is about to be snatched away. In a room. Xiao Jinyan knew that concubine Su often complained about people in her heart, but this time, Xiao Jinyan directly saw concubine Su's new skill of speaking without restraint. Shen Shuwei heard it. She covered her face with both hands. Big sister, stop howling, Xiao Jinyan is here. Shen Liangdi, are you still sleeping? Concubine Su walked in with her skirt lifted, and saw two figures beside the bed. One of them was Shen Shuwei, who would be recognized even if she turned into ashes, and the other was Xiao Jinyan, who would be recognized even if she turned into ashes. She was stunned at the door. It was not right to go in, and it was not right to leave. Concubine Su saw Xiao Jinyan looking up at her. Her phoenix eyes were sparkling, and it was beautiful. But now in concubine Su's eyes, it was no less terrifying than seeing a ghost. Xiao Jinyan looked coldly at concubine Su standing at the door, and saw that she was standing there in a daze, looking frightened. Tao Chenjui didn't know that Xiao Jinyan was inside. Seeing concubine Su standing at the door, she pushed with her hand in confusion, Concubine Su, why don't you go in? Concubine Su was embarrassed, and she wanted to get in even if there was a crack in the ground. Still going in? Going in to die? Tao Chenjui walked in from behind concubine Su, and when he saw the two people in the room, he was as terrified as concubine Su. Why is His Highness here? My dears, good night. I originally planned to update 2 chapters, but I'm stuck, so I'll update 1 chapter first. After the male protagonist recovers his memory, his martial arts will be very strong. Being cute and asking for monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Continue to update 10,000 during the day. The prince longs for me every night after mastering thought reading. Author, Gongzi Iyun Si. Chapter 270. Concubine Su always cursed when she came to Hehuan Hall to complain, because she knew that Xiao Jinyan was busy and would hardly show up at Hehuan Hall during the day. Who would have thought that Xiao Jinyan would be seen in broad daylight? Xiao Jinyan heard all those howls he made just now. If she's not embarrassed, who is? For a moment, the atmosphere in the room was extremely awkward. Concubine Su. Concubine Su and Tao Chenjui reacted and took 2 steps forward to pray to Xiao Jinyan in unison. Wish you all the best, Your Highness. Xiao Jinyan, get up. Concubine Su and Tao Chenjui stood up straight, standing awkwardly. Concubine Su couldn't help complaining, why did Xiao Jinyan rely on Shen Chuwei when he wasn't dealing with official duties in broad daylight? It made her lose face. No, Tao Chenjui said that Xiao Jinyan was here with Shen Chuwei, which meant that it was a good thing that Shen Chuwei was favored. But being here in broad daylight really affects my performance. Finally, I couldn't help shouting, Xiao Jinyan, go get busy. We have big things to discuss. It's imminent. Xiao Jinyan. Even Tao Chenjui couldn't help but complain at this time, and so did His Highness. Lu 11 was not allowed to guard the Hehuan Hall in broad daylight. How embarrassing would it be if he saw something inappropriate for children? Xiao Jinyan. Shen Chuwei and Concubine Su looked at each other, trying to use their eyes to communicate how to resolve the current embarrassing situation. Shen Chu blinked his beautiful big eyes twice, then looked away and continued to tie Xiao Jinyan's girdle. When she saw the pendant on the girdle, she was stunned. The pink sachet matched with the moon-white clothes, which looked pretty good. Shen Chuwei fastened his girdle and reminded, Your Highness, are you going to the imperial study now? Xiao Jinyan said warmly, go there later. Shen Chu turned his head slightly and glanced at Concubine Su and Tao Chenjui. I'll keep up the good work. Shen Chuwei tidied Xiao Jinyan's silky robe, which could no longer be smoothed, and reminded, Your Majesty, aren't you in a hurry? Xiao Jinyan glanced at Concubine Su who was standing aside, lowered her eyes at Shen Chuwei, and could see through her thoughts at a glance. Father cannot be kept waiting any longer. Shen Chu flicked the non-existent dust on Xiao Jinyan's sleeves, and arched his eyebrows, then Your Highness, leave early and come back early. Just when the 3 of them were about to watch Xiao Jinyan leave, Xiao Jinyan spoke, Father, I asked me to go to the imperial study room in the next quarter. The 3 of them were stunned for a moment. Counting the time, it seemed that there was still a moment left. Xiao Jinyan sat on the couch, slowly sipping the hot tea served by Chun 11. Shen Chuwei, Concubine Su, and Tao Chenjui stood side by side, all looking at Xiao Jinyan who was drinking tea, holding a small handkerchief in his hand. Xiao Jinyan took a sip of tea and said, Concubine Su. Concubine Su, who was named, was startled with a guilty conscience. It's over, Xiao Jinyan is going to punish me again. Not to mention kneeling in the Buddha hall, copying the Diamond Sutra, etc. Could it be a grounding? Wouldn't it mean that Shen Chuwei wouldn't be able to see him if he was banned? Wouldn't that stifle me to death? No. Xiao Jinyan paused while drinking tea and found that Concubine Su was quite aware. Concubine Su cautiously took a step forward, I am here. Xiao Jinyan said slowly, you have been a concubine for some time. Concubine Su pinched the small handkerchief in her hand and wailed in her heart, no way, is this going to mean she will be demoted? Doesn't that mean it's 1 level lower than Shuiyan? Not only do you greet others with greetings, but you also have to be a little more cautious when criticizing others. Xiao Jinyan. he suddenly understood why concubine Su and Shen Shuwei were close and had a good relationship. It was all because they were both good at figuring things out. Concubine Su cautiously replied, "Your Highness, I haven't been a concubine for long, her buttocks were not yet hot." Shen Shuwei knew concubine Su relatively well because she was afraid that Xiao Jinyan would lower her status. She raised her eyes and looked at Xiao Jinyan, wondering why Xiao Jinyan mentioned this matter. Xiao Jinyan continued, "I have been busy recently, so you will take over the trivial affairs of the East Palace for the time being." Shen Chu breathed a sigh of relief, and said that Xiao Jinyan would not demote Su's concubine's status because of this incident. Concubine Su was stunned on the spot and began to wonder if she had heard wrongly because her ears were weak. Xiao Jinyan actually asked her to manage the trivial affairs of the East Palace. "Don't you want to punish her?" Xiao Jinyan raised her eyes and glanced at concubine Su. Surprise and disbelief were written all over her face. Seeing that concubine Su didn't respond, Shen Shuwei reached out and poked concubine Su, reminding concubine Su that it was time to come to her senses. When concubine Su was poked by Shen Shuwei, she reacted happily and said, "I obey." Xiao Jinyan then said calmly, "It has been a year since Tao Chenjui entered the East Palace and was promoted to Liang Yuan." Tao Chenjui was also stunned. She had been in the East Palace for a year, and she could count on one finger the number of times she had seen His Highness alone. The daughter of a merchant, she got into the business entirely with money. Suddenly he was promoted to 2 levels, and he felt like he had been hit by a grand prize. Shen Shuwei saw that Tao Chenjui was also in a daze, and poked Tao Chenjui with his finger, trying to bring her back to consciousness. Tao Chenjui reacted, took 2 steps forward, and happily said, "Thank you, Your Highness." After Xiao Jinyan finished talking about the business, he put down the teacup in his hand and looked at Shen Shuwei, "I will go to the imperial study now." Shen Shuwei took 2 steps forward to send Xiao Jinyan out and waved goodbye, "Your Highness, walk slowly." Then he was pulled into the back room by concubine Su. Concubine Su couldn't hold back her excitement. "Now, I will take care of all the daily chores in the East Palace." Tao Chenjui's face was full of joy. "I was promoted 2 grades in a row, and I will be on the same level as Chang Liangyuan in the future." Shen Shuwei congratulated, "Congratulations." Then she congratulated Tao Chenjui again, "Congratulations." After a while of excitement, concubine Su talked about business. "Shen Liangdi, you should also know that the Shameless One is going to enter the Eastern Palace, right?" Shen Shuwei nodded. Tao Chenjui said, "But fortunately, she is not entering the Eastern Palace as the crown princess, not the main concubine. You don't have to worry." Concubine Su said, "How can I not worry? Suiyan is a princess, and she is willing to take a step back and accept the concubine to enter the Eastern Palace, which means that she likes His Highness very much, and His Highness dotes on Shen Liangdi. It's better to be on guard." Shen Shuwei looked at concubine Su's anxious look, and it was as if Suiyan came to steal her sweetheart. She suddenly remembered that concubine Su had just come in and howled, shamelessly coming to steal her man. The definition of Su's concubine has now become that Xiao Jinyan is hers. Although Suiyan did not enter the Eastern Palace as a crown princess, the emperor still gave her a great ceremony as she was a princess. However, no matter how grand the ceremony was, she was not the legal wife in Suiyan's eyes. There should be a marriage procedure without a legal wife. On the 8th day of the first lunar month, it was a good day, and the Ministry of Rites arranged everything. Princess Suiyan wore a gorgeous dress and entered the Kameng Hall of the Eastern Palace. The hall was brightly lit. On the square table, 2 red candles burned very brightly. On the bed with a wedding curtain, Suiyan wore a red wedding dress, which was lighter than the real red. It was complicated and luxurious, with a total of 100 blue sea pearls dotted on the wedding dress.